independent voters will not be able to vote for president in the upcoming primary unless they request a special ballot. Here to tell us more about why is Michael Vu from the County Registrar of Voters and Chad Peace from the Independent Voter Project. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Vu, we will start with you. Please explain the rules as it relates to independent voters.
Well, when it comes down to independent voters or nonpartisan voters, this is a presidential primary election, and the political parties gets to choose who gets to vote on their presidential candidates and who cannot vote on their presidential candidates. And so you have three political parties that are allowing nonpartisan voters or independent voters to vote on their presidential candidates. That includes the Democratic Party, the Libertarian Party, and the American Independent Party. So if you are a nonpartisan voter and a mail ballot voter, we've sent you a postcard asking you to make a selection of what party ballot you want to choose.
And the reason for that is that the parties don't want shenanigans. They don't want people from the Republican side crossing over and casting a vote on the Democratic side, perhaps picking someone that they want to they think is easier to run against. This is to eliminate shenanigans as far as the two parties are concerned, is it not?
What it comes down to is a primary election is the nomination of a presidential candidate. So it's the party's rules that gets to rule the overall.
Fair
and
enough.
Voters need to know that. It's not as straightforward as all the other types of elections, and it only happens every 4 years. So we want to reduce that confusion and have no surprises for voters.
So Chad, how many voters are we talking about that are under the guise of an independent voter?
Well, statewide, we're talking over 6 million voters now. So it's the fastest growing segment of the electorate, outnumbering Republicans now. And so we have this broad, 6 million voters that are looking at a taxpayer-funded presidential primary and
that
saying
they can't participate in.
And they can only by choosing a political party's ballot. Right.
So that number just kind of surprises me. You always hear about how this is a blue state getting bluer, and yet there are that many people that don't have a preference declared.
Right, and so I think that goes part of the whole process of looking at this nationally about the partisanship. Everybody talks about things are getting too partisan. Well, we have to go back and look at the way the elections are conducted in the first place. And so if we design a system that revolves around the voters who do stay with the parties, while at the same time more and more voters are saying, I don't want to associate myself with either one, we have to look at ways that we can conduct an election process that re-engages those voters who aren't trying to vote along party lines.
So that brings it back to you, Michael. How do people who have that I next to their name, how do they fill out a special I want to vote ballot?
So if they're wanting to vote a specific political party ballot and you're a mail ballot voter, we've already sent you a postcard.
Right.
And if you didn't receive it or you've lost that postcard, you can go onto our website at sdvote.com. There's a carousel that says nonpartisan mail ballot voter options. Click on that and you'll see all the various options. There's a fillable form to get it to us. We need to know that information by January 6th so we can send you your
which is right around the corner, right?
Which is this upcoming Monday.
Yeah.
Right now, we sent out over 380,000 of those cards out to nonpartisan mail ballot voters. In the counties, there's 30% of the electorate is a nonpartisan voter. So those that are mail ballot voters, 380,000 of those voters received this postcard. And at this point in time, approximately 49,000 of those individuals have responded or acted upon that card. So what that means is that there's plenty more of these cards and that voters, nonpartisan voters, have yet to act upon. Now, if you're a polls voters, you'll be able to make that selection when you go to your assigned polling location on election day.
All right, so if I'm a political candidate, this news interests me because I think I would want to have a political message that targeted some of these people.
That's right, and a lot of the candidates, especially on the Democratic side, obviously, because they're allowing no party preference to participate, that's been an obstacle for their campaigns. I mean, these are presidential candidates that are running campaigns in 50 different states, and there's different rules in 50 different states. So a lot of that, and I think Michael has done an admirable job here in San Diego with the difficulty of informing voters of the process. I mean, we have presidential candidates who are telling their volunteers, tell our supporters to register Democrat, right? Because they just don't want to deal with the complexity of the explanation of, well, you can stay nonpartisan, but then you have to ask for a ballot and do this. So the complexity of the rules introduce a lot of confusion for the voters. I don't envy the registrars that have to deal with all of these rules, but I think San Diego's doing better than a lot of other places. And so, the best thing we can do now with the rules that we're given the election coming up in a couple months, is just try to inform as many voters as possible, try to make sure that people at least know the rights that they do have. And then, getting past the election, let's sit down and talk about how we maybe can do this better next time.
Before we leave, what would be a better way to do it?
I'll leave that out.
Or you have to be a nonpartisan, but what would be a better way to do it?
Well, so we offered a solution this year that, there's two conflicting rights here. There's the rights of the political parties, and then there's the rights of the individual voter.
Right.
Right? And the reality is the presidential nomination, as Michael said, serves the private interest of the political parties.
Right.
And those nominees are actually not selected by our primary. They're selected at the national convention of the political parties. So the solution the Independent Voter Project offered was, let the parties have their primary. Let Republican voters vote in the Republican. Let the Democrat voters. Let them invite nonpartisan voters to participate. But let's also have a separate public ballot that every candidate is listed and any voter can choose. And so instead of having a default ballot for independent voters that's blank for president, the default is it lists everybody, and you get to cast a vote. Now, if the parties want to consider those results, fine. If they want to discard those results, fine. But in a taxpayer-funded process, let everybody at least cast who they want to vote, and then let the private parties decide what to do with it.
That sounds like more work for you.
Well, at the end of the day, we're going to administrate the election one way or the other, regardless of whatever the model is. And for this upcoming, the model is what it is. These are the party's rules of how we are supposed to conduct the election, and voters need to understand that. So we're asking all voters to absolutely do three things. Learn about the presidential primary election. That's one of the reasons why we send out 1.8 million of these postcards to every single registered voter within the county. Two is to verify your information, your residence address, your mailing address, as well as your political party preference, because that matters for this upcoming March 3rd presidential election. And then thirdly is to make sure that you act now. Do not wait until election day to find out who the candidates are, what your party preference are, where your residence address is on file with our office. Do this well in advance of the February 18th registration deadline.
Gentlemen, good information. Thank you for spending time with us.
And thank you.
We'll leave it there. I bet you we'll chat again before not too long.